to a possible announcement that there has been a ancient civilization found under the ice. Apparently, in 1938 and 39, the Nazis had a pretty heavy expedition down to the Antarctic. And when they were down there, they found all of these ancient ruins, which part of the ruins they were able to, I guess, cannibalize for their own uses and created bases there, and have ever since been looking through the remnants of this ancient civilization, but keeping it secret.
When you get into it, it's quite interesting. And there's a new information coming out through a Michael Sala article, and it says that through briefing sessions coming to an end, you say that the meetings with Sigmund, we're going to get to who Sigmund is and what his connection to you was, but they're saying that there's significant information about Trump and his administration right now to disclose the truth about technologies. Evidence of secret memorandum issued by Trump says that after taking office in January 20, 2017, he's about to declassify secret patents involving health and free energy technologies. Do you think this is really going to happen?
Well, when he initially put out the memo, he received pushback from the civilian intelligence community and the DoD, stating that, sure, we will get right on that, but it'll take about 10 years to process. And he fired back, I know I want it released in my first term, which sent chills up the spine of all of these civilian intelligence groups, because they want to keep this stuff hidden. They do not want it to come out because a lot of it is incriminating to them. They've caused a lot of, I guess, crimes against humanity to keep these secrets.
He would have the power to basically pardon anybody, whistleblowers, anybody with this information. But you're saying this technology is going to take a while to get out to the public. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's what Trump really wanted. I'm surprised that usually Trump gets what he wants, and there's people in charge of things, a higher power than the president himself.
Yes, there are 38 levels of secrecy above the president of the United States, and the intelligence communities have refused to brief Trump on the secret space programs and known extraterrestrial life. Pretty much the same briefing that you would see if you looked up the Reagan diaries and saw the briefing that he supposedly got. They don't trust him. They're afraid that he's just going to tweet it out.
Yeah. What are they going to do? I wonder if he just, how he does do his daily tweets, and he sometimes goes on his own tangent, it seems. You think they're still going to be able to control a guy like Trump, almost a free will type of person?
No, as a matter of fact, they did not want him in office at all. They would make comments such as, we would stab him on Inauguration Day if we had to. But apparently the DoD approached these intelligence communities and told them that if they did assassinate him, or if they interfered with any peaceful transition, that they would pull an open coup.
He's pretty intimidated, it sounds like, when you hear this kind of information. And wow, how do you think the president himself, is he aware that he's pretty much maybe the 39th person in a classification of need to know?
Well, yes, this president definitely knows it. It turns out, he's really, he's been into conspiracy theory for a long time. He talks with Alex Jones, who actually just on the 17th made a few remarks about the secret space program that is going on. So it appears that Trump is well aware of a lot of this, also because of some family ties that he has. So he is well aware, and he's also well aware that he's not getting any of the briefings that the other presidents did.
Yeah, fascinating. And I wonder if they're going to be able to hold the big Trumpster down, and if maybe he's going to, do it on his own and take a risk because he's already been taking a lot of risk. He's on these rallies. He's putting himself out there in the public. So it's quite interesting. Hopefully he does something soon. Now, let's get into this. You were recruited through one of the MyLab programs at a young age of 6 years old. Can you tell me exactly what is MyLab and how would you become a recruited person or child at the time?
Well, MyLab we really need to come up with a better term. It stands for military abductions. And really, MyLabs are, if a person is abducted by a non-terrestrial and returned, the government will come and abduct them again to be debriefed on what the aliens picked them up for, and then they will be given a screen memory and put back in their daily lives. So that's usually what MyLab means. It's been used a lot for these programs such as MK Ultra and a lot of the other Ultra programs. They lump it in under MyLab. But what occurred was I was identified as an intuitive empath through standardized testing in public school. When I was identified as an intuitive empath, they then brought me into a so-called special school program that pulled me out of my regular school activities. And once to 3 times a week, I would be taken on field trips. And these field trips ended up at Carswell Air Force Base or other places similar that Air Force personnel, intelligence personnel were at, and they would put us through all types of training and virtual reality scenarios to build personality profiles on us so they would know whether they wanted to draft us up into the secret space program or just have us work for these, I guess, loosely connected syndicates that we call the Cabal or the Illuminati.
Yeah, to say the least. So it wasn't all fun and games. It wasn't we're going on field trips and going and sightseeing. You're being tested like pretty much a lab rat. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you what a intuitive. How would you know if you were an intuitive? What kind of test did you? What was the standard? What stood out?
Intuitive just means you have a very strong intuition about what's about to happen or, what's going on. You have a good intuition, and you learn to trust that intuition because it's accurate. An empath is a person who actually feels other people's feelings and emotions. So an intuitive empath is a hot commodity for these groups because they can be trained to interface with non-terrestrials. And otherwise, it's usually a one-way communication. If you're not an intuitive empath and haven't had the training, usually you can have a non-terrestrial communicate with you telepathically, but it's usually a one-way conversation.
You were part of a highly classified Air Force space program, which closely cooperates with U.S. Military entities such as the National Reconnaissance Office and the National Security Agency. So were you actually a pilot? How did this work? What is actually the secret space program? Go ahead.
Actually, this was not I was not involved in the Air Force program. The Air Force program is what we call the Military Industrial Complex program, and they're usually within 500 miles of near-Earth orbit, and they only have a couple space stations that are unknown to us that are around the 400 or 500 mile mark altitude that they service with TR-3B type craft, and they also have small bases on the moon. The program I was brought into was called Solar Warden, and it was a Navy program. And it is an interstellar program. They're out traveling throughout our solar system and into other solar systems. I was brought on as an intuitive empath when I was 16, almost 17, just a couple months from my birthday. And they were going to have me assigned to a research vessel where it was full of scientists and engineers, and I was going to be a specialist or a tech, depending which one of the two I was working for. But when I was first brought there, the captain stated that they had a few other people from my program there, and all they did was cry and call for mama the first year. So he did not want me on his vessel. So they sent me to another group that was the Intruder Intercept and Interrogation Program. And it's much like the Men in Black. They come down and locate non-terrestrials that are living amongst us, and they will abduct those non-terrestrials and then bring them to a base to interrogate them, to find out why they're here, what their objectives are and agendas are. And I was a part of that for 10 months, almost a year. And after that, then I was reassigned back to the research vessel, where I spent the remainder of the 19 years.
Who is this person, Sigmund? He seems like he's in charge. Is he in one of the? What's his classification on a rank from 1 to 38? And what kind of chemicals did they subject on you?
Well, this particular individual is a high-ranking Air Force personnel. Whenever I've met them on their uniform, he does not wear rank insignia or any of the FLIR that would, show any designations of what unit he is associated to. But how I first was introduced to this gentleman, using that word loosely, I was picked up just outside my house by one of these strange vessels that are somewhat triangular, but two airmen were standing below it. And they brought me onto the vessel, and they began to interrogate me, asking me questions about this Navy space program that supposedly existed. And Sigmund was the officer in charge, and they came out and they injected me with chemicals. They chemically interrogated me to a point to where they were holding this tablet below my head. My head was hanging down, and they were going through all these academy-looking photos of military personnel, and there's a camera on this little pad, and whenever I would look at one and recognize a person, it would highlight them. And I inadvertently gave up 3 naval personnel that were a part of Project Solar Warden. He also took, he couldn't believe what I was saying. He was trying to figure out how I was so accurate about so many things, but I was talking about this Navy program that he was told didn't exist. And he was very upset once he figured out that I was telling the truth. He said that he thought his group was the tip of the spear, but he found out that they were the effing Coast Guard.
When you were a school student, or how was your childhood after being experimented on? You're seeing these things. How were you relating with other children, and were you told not to speak about it? Were you compelled to keep your mouth shut? Did you want to tell anybody? How did you just kind of went public with this stuff not too long ago?
It came out. Yeah. It came out in I was a kid and I had this unexplained PTSD. After each of the training sessions or field trips, they would do what they call blank slating, which was basically a mind wipe, and then they would give you a screen memory. What is interesting is that 3 to 5% of people that they give screen memories to or do the blank slating on, it doesn't work. Within days or weeks, the memories come flooding back, and that's usually with intuitive empaths. And what they've come to realize is that, I'll use IT terms because I used to be a technician. We have this physical hard drive that's our brain, and we have memories there. But you hear people talk about past life memories. How could you have a past life memory on this physical hard drive that's only existed since you've been alive? Well, it turns out that your higher self acts like a virtual hard drive, and everything that occurs, memories are stored there as well. And some people that are intuitive empaths get an automatic, backup or download of the information when it's been messed with. Yeah, they tried blank slating me on what we call the 20 and back. You serve 20 years and then they bring you back. And the strangest part is they age regress you to where you were when they drafted you, and then they regress you in time back to the point you were taken. That's pretty bizarre.
So almost a child in an adult's body, would you say, or is that how it works?
Well, no. Well, about when I was in 1986, when I was 16 years old, on my Christmas break, is when they came and picked me up, and I was drafted into the 20 and back program. I was told that I would serve 20 years in this program. I would come back. I would have the best job around. I wouldn't want for anything, which that's a promise they didn't keep. And they stated that my life would not be that heavily affected because they were going to age regress me and time regress me back to the time that I was taken. and that I would pick up where I left off, and my family would never notice me missing.
Wow. So there's technology for reversing life itself that exists right now that was used upon you.
Absolutely. And there's William Tompkins is a recent whistleblower that has heavy documentation and works for the Navy and a lot of aerospace companies. And TRW was one of them. And they have had telomere types of therapy and also age regression therapy for some time. But they have, I guess, suppressed it, even from a lot of these elites, such as the Rockefeller that just passed away today.
Yeah, didn't he just have a recent heart transplant, like one of the oldest men to receive a heart transplant? And yeah, I was just made
That's
aware
right.
that
I forgot about
Rockefeller
that.
passed.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's right.
And we really got to watch out for, because what do you think about Dick Cheney? Dick Cheney, he's had a few heart issues himself. At one point, he called himself Darth Vader. He didn't have a pulse, and that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
People referred to him as Darth Vader.
I sort of say he probably didn't have a heart transplant. He just had a heart implant, because I doubt he had one before. From what I've heard in the programs, yeah, he's a pretty scary individual.
Yeah, maybe the head of MK Ultra, from what we've heard over the years. Now, let's take a big trip. Let's take a big trip to the Antarctica. I saw your presentation last week, and it was mind-blowing. And there were some things you got to think out of the box from the way you were explaining on your experiences there in the Antarctic. How did you come to even get there, and why were you even brought there? What was the whole idea about, let's bring Corey Good over to the Antarctica? How did that all work out?
Well, I had been introduced several years ago to this group that we're calling the Spear Being Alliance. And I had been interfacing with this tall blue avian race that, in my 20 years in the programs and all of the intruders we had captured and interrogated, I'd never, ever heard of an 8-foot-tall bluebird being. And I was pretty concerned when it first started communicating with me. I didn't know what was going on. But through the process of getting to communicating and getting to know these beings, I was introduced to an inner Earth group called the Anshar. And this Anshar group took an active interest in me because I was in communication with who they called the Guardians. They said this was the return of the Guardians. They were very excited about it. So since I was seen as somewhat of an ambassador, and I was working with the Secret Space Program Alliance, who was working to give us full disclosure, this Inner Earth group has taken me twice to Antarctica. Once for a reconnaissance flight under the ice, about 2 miles under the ice. There's a huge industrial complex. There were buildings all over the place that looked very industrial, smoke coming out of them, steam coming out of them, very human looking. And there were giant submarines under the ice that had popped up that were the size of, I guess, the giant ships that carried the big shipping containers. It was huge, and I saw these submarines being unloaded with giant cranes that were reaching in the top that rolled back and pulling out these giant containers.
How old was it? Was it an ancient civilization and infrastructure built on there, or was it something from the Nazi era?
Well, interestingly enough, there were ancient structures nearby. There were blocks, like hewn blocks, sticking out of the ground, the earth under the ice, and also from within the ice cavern wall, like they were suspended up in the ice. The actual buildings looked very much like a 20th century or 21st century, an industrial area, like an industrial complex close to any city or close to any shoreline. It was very human looking, very modern looking, and in the middle they had a huge generator that was a geothermal generator that generated heat from the Earth. And the interesting thing is that there were pools of water around also that were steaming, like hot pools that were heated by geothermal energy. And it turns out that the geothermal energy is picking up at such a high rate in Antarctica, it's causing the ice shelf to heat up by like 1 degree every year or so, which is causing a rapid melt. And our activities under the ice, both excavating these ancient civilizations using pressurized steam and these facilities we have under there, are causing the ice to melt quicker.
So that was your first trip. What about your second trip to the Antarctica? Was it under the same group that you went with the first time?
Yes, the Anshar took me again and took Lieutenant Commander Gonzalez, who's been one of my major contacts with the Secret Space Program Alliance, took us both down to a different region of Antarctica, but they flew right through the ice shelf, just like you were passing through regular atmosphere. And I guess there was some way to dematerialize the ship, and then we pop out in
wow,
this
so
huge
you're saying
ice
the
cavern.
craft itself is actually traveling through hard material like ice, like if we're thin air?
In the Anshar city, I saw hundreds of these things flying around above in a huge cavern, flying through the cavern walls. So, yeah, they've got some sort of advanced technology that allows them to dematerialize and pass through solid objects.
I've never heard of that before. That's quite insane. Is it basically, it's not moving the material as it's going through. It's basically going through it almost through a time and space. Like it's like change their vibration. Everything is made of vibration. Everything is frequency. And if they're able to change the frequency and rearrange matter in a certain way, I think that's what allows them to pass straight through solid objects. All right. So this Middle Earth, the entrance to Middle Earth, is there more than one entrance, or is Antarctica pretty much the main portal to?
Yeah, most of the entrances are guarded by some sort of a military installation, or are in Tibet and are watched over by monks. They do have a large entrance in Antarctica, but it didn't quite go as I expected. When I was on the reconnaissance flight, I thought we were going to shoot back through the way we came, but instead we went over this sort of a bay of warmer water that was lapping the shores next to this industrial area I saw. And instead of flying in the direction I thought we went straight down the way that these submarines came from, and we ended up entering this large rift system that is the West Antarctic Rift system or something like that. And we went very deep underground and traveled through this rift system that had been tunneled out by some ancient alien race that allowed you to travel from Antarctica all the way up to Central America and the southern and southwestern parts of the United States, all completely underwater.
This underground, basically, city, you said that was the size of Texas. Like, it had its own ecosystem. It had its own light, warmth. Tell us about what it's like to be in a place that big. It just sounds so overwhelming.
It was overwhelming. When you walk up to a building and you feel like you're going to fall over backwards looking towards the top, or a giant tree, one of the redwood trees. Imagine that, but you walk walk through an entrance into a huge cavern area to where the ceiling is so high you can't even see it because there's a fine mist that it's created like clouds, like a enclosed environment that it even rains in there at times. So
let me ask you this. There are people that live an everyday life right here on our, above the planet, regular life. Is there enough room in inner Earth that we could, as a human race, like go visit other worlds that are we don't have to go to other planets. It's right up there. We could enter this. Would they allow maybe a tourism? Would it be possible, like a tourist destination one of these days?
So some of the areas, yes, definitely, but this Anshar group, they're very leery of human beings. When they've contacted us in the past, they always tell us we're from the Pleiades or something like that, and they do that for operational security because we are such a violent race. They're afraid that if we knew where they were underground, we would attack them, which indeed has happened from some of our Black Projects groups. So they're not going to invite too many people into their city, but there are plenty of other areas underground that we could take refuge in. And after we have full disclosure, I think we're going to have a lot of spelunkers that are also archaeologists that are going to be, traveling to the inner Earth. And there's so much to find down there, let alone out in space.
Well, yeah, count me in. I want to be there. I want to be there, and I want to get on that ship that you were on. That sounds incredible. Let's talk about some of the creatures that live in inner Earth. You were telling the people over there in the symposium in Kona last week that they were talking about a race of raptors,
yeah.
And there was a war with soldiers, like military soldiers. Were they American soldiers? What was that all about?
Well, the raptors were remnants of the dinosaurs, and they went underground to survive. And they're sort of a proto-dinosaur bird. They have plumes of feathers on them. They have real jerky movements. They're super fast, and they're carnivorous. So the incident that I was talking about that involved the Marines was not long ago, after the current president took over. Some of the bases that were built by FEMA but not controlled by FEMA were supposed to be turned over to the new leaders of these different groups under the new president. But some of them refused and locked the doors. And Marines were sent in to basically drill holes through these walls, cut through the rebar and steel, and go in and arrest these people. And if the people refused to give up, these Marines were ordered to wipe out everyone in the base. And in one of these occasions, they had to go in, and they were under orders to wipe everyone out. And in the battle, these Marines were shocked to become face-to-face with 8-foot-tall reptilians who were fighting them. And these Marines had zero briefings that ETs even exist, let alone they would run into them and have to do battle with them. So all of a sudden, they're standing there in front of the devil or a demon with the M16 doing battle with them. And I hear that they did not do so well psychologically afterwards.
Yeah, post-traumatic stress disorder. Let me ask you, people theorize that dinosaurs, since they've been around for millions and millions of years, far longer than the human race has existed on planet Earth, that they developed complex languages. Did these raptors, did they communicate? Were we able to communicate back and forth with them?
Well, I don't know how they communicate. I assume from their physiology it isn't through a voice box. I assume that it's some sort of telepathic type of thing. But our military has been in contact with them to get access to certain areas, like these giant crystal caves that they took over a long time ago that used to belong to the Anshar. And these giant crystal caves are huge depositories of information.
Would it be the president of the United States that would authorize this combat with this raptor race, or would it be some other general above rank of the president?
It would be one of these individuals in the intelligence community that has the clearance that's 38 levels above the president, or somewhere above the president within that 38 levels.
Wow, incredible. So there were other races down there. You were saying they looked like humans in their own way, different nationalities. You have an Asian-looking race. You have an African-looking race, and there are Caucasians. Do they get along down there? Is there a conflict between the races in Earth?
Well, a lot of these human-type races that you've described, they don't normally meet with each other, but they kind of stay separated unless there's a huge emergency. They claim, the Anshar at least, claim to have be human beings that originated on Earth approximately 18 million years ago. They say that they've been here that long, and that they've been highly developed technologically and had their own breakaway civilization. And that breakaway civilization went underground, and they found that it was a lot safer down there. They were shielded from the sun, which causes a rapid aging and a lot of other things. And they were also isolated away from the ebb and flow of disasters that occur on this planet on a regular cycle.
Wow, that's amazing. So what would you prefer to live in? Up here on the surface of the Earth or inner Earth? What would you prefer if you really had a choice?
If they offered my family and I a condo down in that Anshar city, I would disappear in a heartbeat.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
It was magnificent.
So is there a danger that we might just do something stupid because we don't trust what's going on in there? And would there be a possibility of like maybe a nuclear event, or they're pretty much, do they have security? Can they defend themselves in case of an invasion by some tyrant?
Yes, they can, and they've been doing battle like with the Raptors for quite some time, and a couple of other groups. But interestingly enough, since on the surface we've developed these scalar weapons, we can penetrate deep, like 40 miles into the ground, and that has become a major threat to them, because it has been used on some of their facilities. Some of these groups, they're looking to take out all the negative ET underground facilities, which there are many, but in doing so, they don't differentiate. They find an underground base, it isn't ours, so they attack it remotely with this technology.
Wow, and what about this? Have you left planet Earth? Have you been in space?
Yes, I was assigned to the research vessel they called the Sommerfeld. That I was assigned to that for 19 years. Even though I was sent on other expeditions and missions, my assignment was to this research vessel. And the research vessel, we spent a lot of time around Jupiter. We spent time around. They even did studies of the sun, where they were shooting probes into the dark spots, the little eddies on the sun, and to penetrate the sun to get more information about it. And they were able to prove that it's an electroplasmic sun. It's not a giant hydrogen generator or whatever. And the fact that our universe, the physics model that is used in these black programs, is an electric plasmic universe model. The fact that that's been suppressed from surface humanity, that's what's not allowed surface humanity to develop a lot of these, very interesting technologies such as free energy or anti-gravity. Once we are taught the true physics and we understand that everything is electric plasmic, then we will adopt a new mathematics model, and we'll be able to build these things very easily.
What was the ship like? What did the ship, did it launch from a regular launching facility like Cape Canaveral, or was it a secret mission?
Well,
and
it was
how
originally
big was
built,
the ship?
Yeah, it was originally built in the early 80s in a secret location under the mountains in Utah. And then they were flown into space, and then our personnel are brought there in smaller craft. Now, this particular craft was, and they're very much like a nuclear submarine, a nuclear submarine in space. As a matter of fact, a lot of the people that serve on them are what they call squids, or are either current Navy submarine personnel or used to be Navy submarine personnel. So it's basically no different than being in a submarine, a very large submarine that's modular, just like the new nuclear submarines. And it had a crew that went from anywhere from like 260 or 70 to over 300 people, which they have naval vessels that are much larger than that. And it was cigar shaped. And some of the larger cigar shaped vessels are up to 1 kilometer long, if you can imagine that.
Wow. It sounds like an adventure that if your life was done now, you would have already completed any more than most people could ever dream. So that's you could walk away and think to yourself, that's a testament.
Yeah,
my brother's interrupting me, but yeah, what a testament. What about when you went onto did you get to the dark side of the moon? What's going on over there? Did you get to?
Yeah, that's where the Lunar Operation Command is on the dark side of the moon at about the 10 o'clock position, just on the other side. Sometimes videos have popped out of a flurry of craft flying away out of that area. And it was originally set up, believe it or not, in the 1940s by the Nazis, who had developed their own secret space program and had flying saucers that they were flying outside of our atmosphere that early in our history. And they developed they set up a base there that at one time it was shaped like a swastika, the way they did the buildings.
Wow. Do you think it was was it done purposeful, according to Hitler's design?
Yes, the swastika shape of the building was on purpose. After the Americans, basically the Germans infiltrated the military-industrial complex of the United States through paperclip, and then after these negotiations that occurred in 1952, after the Nazis overflew the White House and D.C., that forced Truman and Eisenhower to come to the table with them and discuss a partnership, because the Germans knew that the highest secret in the land was the ET phenomenon. And it's not because they didn't want people to know about ETs, it's because they didn't want people to know about the free energy that powered them. So once they had infiltrated the military-industrial complex, basically took over and won the war, post-war, basically, then this new military-industrial complex space program began to utilize the Lunar Operation Command, this base on the moon, and they built it out. And as they built it out, they purposely removed the shape of a swastika from the way the buildings were organized.
Elon Musk has been paid basically approximately $100 million to fly a couple billionaires around the moon, apparently in the next couple of years. When they're on their adventure, I'm sure they're going to be going around the dark side of the moon. How are they going to?
Yes.
How are they going to suppress it? Do you think they're going to reveal what's on the dark side of the moon? These billionaires, I'm sure they want to find out for themselves.
They could. Most of these secret bases, both the non-terrestrial ones and the human ones, are masked by using this holographic technology. What is not masked, however, are some of the ancient ruins up there and crashed vehicles. Apparently there was an ancient war that occurred in our solar system, and the moon ended up being kind of like a Switzerland area. I mean, no battles are allowed to occur on it, and they left it. I mean, you have non-terrestrial groups that can't stand each other, have been at war for millennia, that are just a few kilometers away from each other on the moon, but they never fight. And because of this big treaty that occurred. Now, they left a lot of these crashed ships and other debris on the backside of the moon as a testament to remind the other groups how terrible this war was. The Star Wars story is basically true. It did not happen long, long ago and far, far in a galaxy far, far away. Most of it happened in our own solar system.
And it's happening right now. Yeah.
Yes.
That's it's incredible. When is disclosure going to happen? Is there any way that you could provide any kind of evidence that we could just blow the lid off everything and, do something to get things rolling? Because your experience, I'm jealous, man. A lot of people want to experience the same thing and not have to go through these MyLab programs.
Yeah. I have people all the time contact me and saying, "How do I join this program?" And I'm like, "Have you listened to anything I said?" It's dark. There's dark stuff going on. There's a human slave trade, interstellar human slave trade going on, to where, for a long time, these non-terrestrials were coming down and scooping up humans and then taking off with them. And finally, these Illuminati type groups said, "Wait a minute, that means they want humans, so humans are a commodity." So they began trading people for technology and other biological information from other star systems that they could use for their studies. So, nearly 1 million people go missing every year, and a good portion of them end up being traded off as slaves or worse in this intergalactic slave trade or interstellar slave trade.
Now that's kind of scary. I have to say, because there are millions of people around the world that say they've been abducted every year, and a lot of them, unfortunate ones, are never to be seen again.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to full disclosure, if we get a full disclosure event, a lot of people that listen to the show might be saying, "That would be great. It'd be a big kumbaya moment. We'll all hold hands and, sing a song." But disclosure, if we get full disclosure, it's going to be one of the most traumatic events that ever happened to humanity. But it's needed because all evolution happens in stress. A lot of these groups right now are working on a partial disclosure to where they will unroll disclosure over 50 to 100 years. They want to make sure that many of them have a chance to die because so many crimes against humanity have been committed just to keep the secret alone. So disclosure is a very shaky subject, and a lot of people just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, little by little, soft baby steps in the beginning, but give us a little bit and then a little bit more. I guess they're doing it a little through technology, because technology seems like they are trickling down some of the information that they have in their archive.
Yes. Yeah. They've been this slow release of information and planting seeds in our consciousness about the aliens and these secret space programs has been going on for quite a while, going all the way back to the Star Trek when it came out. Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry had close connections with the son of a major admiral, according to Dr. Sala's research, that was involved with Solar Warden. So he had a direct contact with people that were in the U.S. secret space program.
Yeah, Michael Sala, he does good work, and I want to be touching base with him real soon. But, the show's just about done, but that just flew by so fast, so much information. We want to invite you back sometime in the near future. I'm sure we just touched the tip of the iceberg with the experiences that you've been on, and you probably could go on for days talking about this. But can you please tell us how people could find you, and what are you going to be doing next? And is there any message that you've received from any of these alien races that we should be aware of?
Well, I can be reached at spherebeingalliance.com. I also have a YouTube channel, Sphere Being Alliance. And a lot of these non-terrestrial groups are very positive, but we do have the negative ones, and a lot of people don't want to believe that. And we have to be mentally prepared for such a thing. And I'll be happy to come back on your show because yes, we have plenty to talk about. And Dr. Sala is about to release 3 more articles. He released one today that are going to cover a lot of intelligence that I briefed him on the 16th of this month while I was there in Hawaii.
Absolutely. That was incredible. It makes me think, and it makes me think along many hours after this conversation and what I heard last week from what Corey Goods just told us. Everybody, take a look at the Sphere Being Alliance. All the links will be below in the description. Stay tuned and keep in touch with Corey Good on his YouTube channel because he's coming up with updates quite often. That was Corey Good, everybody. And if you've captured anything quite amazing in the skies, something on video that you can't explain, submit it to us right here at Third Phase of Moon. Wow, incredible story, incredible insight and information. We'll see everybody again next time. Blake Cousins, Third Phase of Moon.